Hello, everybody, and welcome. Please sit down and make yourself comfortable. I would like to tell you that I am Ken Adams and that I am the artistic director of Synergy Theater, and that you have arrived safely and soundly at our regularly scheduled programming. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you that because I am not Ken Adams. And this is not Synergy Theater. And you are not safe. What I can tell you is that you have arrived just in time for a series of stories as inspired by my friend, Mr. Edgar Allan Poe. I can furthermore tell you that as each storyteller steps forth to weave their tale, they shall first test your perspicacity. They shall test your insight by seeing if you can divine an important piece of information that is integral to the start of their tale. And therefore, we shall practice that now. When you wish to offer an answer, simply type it in to your infernal futuristic YouTube device. Oh, yes. You must be logged into your YouTube account in order to interact with our storytellers today. Let us give this a try. For example, if a storyteller were to suddenly imply that they wished you to guess a certain animal that was integral to their story, why don't you go ahead and see if you can think of what animal it is I'm thinking of now? Ah, very good. I see you have the system down. Well then, there is very little else for me to do except to wish you good luck and tell you that perhaps if all of us are still alive, I will see you at the end.
It was the stroke of midnight. I was awake, as always, for I am a creature of the dusk, when I heard a peculiar sound in the distance. Surely you can guess what sound it was. I sat there, hearing it call me. What sound was it? Tell me now, please. Yes, it was the sound of a screaming lady. A wretched call in the night, one disturbing my awakened state. So I crept down my stairs through my long hallway, and I peered out onto the wet cobblestone street. There beneath the lamplight, green in all its glory, she stood.
Please, sir, let me in!
But you are a stranger.
Yes! Please! I'm desperate!
Well, I have warmth in my home. I welcome you.
Oh, you're right. It's so much warmer in here. Thank you.
It had been many years since I had had a visitor. Why, no one would want to visit my abode, not after last time. But this one was ignorant to where she had found herself. Crumpet! Freshly baked.
Yes, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm so starving. They smell odd though. They taste good, but they smell of rot.
You step into my home and you insult my treats.
It appears your home is smaller than I at first thought. I'm sorry to insult you, but it feels a bit odd in here.
Well, perhaps it's not a palace as the one that you are surely from. Yes, I know who you are.
You do? I thought I'd disguised myself for an evening stroll. I don't often go out. You see, I often am propositioned in so many ways for my wealth that, well, I guess you know that. It seems as if it's a chill now in here. Do you feel that chill?
I feel perfectly warm, but perhaps I should stoke the flames.
Oh, yes. Would you mind if I came closer? Perhaps it's just the damp. The damp needs to get heated away. Oh, is that absinthe? Could I have a bit of the green fairy?
It's quite expensive, not that you would know, but please indulge yourself.
Oh, thank you. I do like it so much. Oh, and you have such a beautiful setting of silver to melt the sugar. Thank you.
Why, it's not much for a duchess such as yourself, but it shall do.
I think you have a rat. I'm so sorry to say. I just saw something scamper by.
That is Cardamom. He is a close friend.
Like the spice? Cardamom like the spice?
Yes, cardamom is one of the secret ingredients in my crumpets.
Oh, maybe that's what I'd mistaken for that strange smell. But you say it's a friend or a pet of yours, you said, cardamom?
Yes, worry not. He loves ladies such as yourself. But tell me, a woman of such richness and wealth wailing in the midnight hour on my street, it's quite a stir.
Well, it was the moon. Didn't you see the moon was turning red? Is that normal? Perhaps because I don't go out, I don't see it, but it looked like blood was seeping onto the moon. I'm so sorry to have yelled, but Cardamom, could you keep him from my skirts, please?
No, I don't control him. But what you have witnessed, the blood moon, is something that only comes around every 212 years. Tonight is a special night.
Oh, so you're saying I should be dying of curiosity and intrigued rather than affright. Perhaps I should go back outside and see this phenomenon.
No, please, wait here. I have a friend coming, and she is such a dear fan of yours. She would love to meet you.
Oh, well, how kind. You flatter me. Is that her? Oh, she just appeared as if she didn't even come through the door. Oh.
Hello.
Diantha, welcome.
Diane.
You know the Duchess, do you not?
I know of her by reputation. It is a pleasure to meet you, as I am an admirer.
Oh, well, thank you. You're beautiful. Well, my mother's name was Iris, so I love people with flower names. They remind me of my mother, but you're so young. You seem wise beyond your age.
Why, thank you. I pride myself on my wisdom. But tell me, what brings you here as a guest? I did not know that you were acquainted.
Oh, I had such great fortune. I was a fright, and I was rescued by your gentle host. He's fed me crumpets, introduced me to his rat. Do you know the rat?
Cardamom.
Yes.
Yes, I'm familiar with him.
They
And
dated for a
friend.
spell, but the breakup was quite messy.
I thought you said dated. My ears must be full of water as well.
May I ask you a question? Are you a fan of masks? For I have many.
I do love a good masked ball. I have a collection of my own, but I'm also curious to see yours.
Why, Diantha and I make them ourselves, but ours are peculiar in a sense, for
Yes.
they have a great resemblance to famous figures. Ones
Such
of the past.
as
Oh, well, please. I'm most anxious to see one. Let me see. Who might you think I'd be interested in?
Let me reach in my chest, shall I, Diantha, and pull one from it.
Oh, what a lovely chest. Oh, that gold on it. It looks quite ancient. Oh,
Does it look familiar?
it looks like me.
Ah, well, it is a cousin of yours, her likeness.
A cousin.
So
of-
sad she went missing months ago.
Tragic, actually.
Oh, you don't mean my cousin Rose, do you, please? We've been looking for her so far and wide.
Why,
It does-
Diantha, would you like to try it on to model?
Oh, yes.
Stunning, is it not?
Oh, Rose.
How do I look, Duchess?
Oh,
Or
what a
should I say cousin?
Yes, what a comfort it is to see. Why, you even have her expressions. She always looked so startled and wide-eyed and full-lipped. Oh my, your eyes are very much like hers.
Why, I
didn't-
have more. Men as well.
Oh, men, oh good.
Perhaps you recognize this one.
Oh no. Robert. I thought I'd never see Robert again. Oh, Robert, please
Do put it on.
Duchess,
Oh,
it is me, Robert.
Oh.
Return to you.
Oh, I've worn this black ever since you left me, Robert. I thought you'd never come back from the Americans. You were so taken by their spirit and ideas. And now you're, well, I hope you don't mind if I say you're back. And Robert, can you?
My dear Duchess,
Oh,
it is only a mask. But we are looking to expand our collection, are we not, Diantha?
Yes. We're desperately in need of a woman of some standing for our collection.
oh, Lady Abernathy. If you could make a likeness of Lady Abernathy, it would be amazing, for she is so well known throughout the entire community.
You know what,
And we had
Duchess?
different ideas, didn't we?
Oh,
I'm sorry, I just recalled something. The
yes.
cardamom I used in the crumpets. It should make you feel sleepy. It is a side effect.
Well, now that Rose and Robert are no longer. You're right. I don't wish to be a rude guest, but it's so warm and comfy right here. But the cardamom keeps, nibbling at my.
Sleep, woman, sleep.
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 I guess I can't stay awake.
And so her eyes lolled and her neck fluttered back until the Duchess found herself sleeping upon my floor. Diantha assembled the tools. Together, whilst I stretched her skin, Diantha procured a new mask for our collection. What the blood moon brings, such good tidings and new beautiful faces for the two of us to wear. Why, Duchess, what beauty you show in the night.
It makes me feel like screaming, Robert. That blue moon, or shall I say red?
Oh, do not scream, for it is me, your forlorn love returned to you. Perhaps we should consummate.
Let's. Your chamber or mine?
And so, my dear listener, the two of us went off to find each other in famous faces entangled. And this is where our story comes to an end.
It was over time that it niggled at the back of my brain, reader, this object, which at first seemed insignificant, but grew and grew in my consciousness. Yes, you know what this object was. I at first barely noticed it, and yet, as time went on, I could not help but see it. Yes, a tiny speck, a speck of dust, so small that you would barely see it, so small that I needed to put on a white glove and roll it over a surface to pick it up. And yet, there it was. Every night, as I went up the stairs, I could see it, the same speck, in the same place, as if it had been laid there purposely. And every morning, as I came down, the same speck, laid again right upon the same swirl of the banister, in the same spot, not as if, but clearly, deliberately, laid there to mock me. And as the days and weeks went on, this speck of dust and its brothers and sisters grew. And I knew, dear reader, I knew that it was she. I knew Marissa, my maid who was gifted to me by my dear husband on my wedding day, was there to make me go mad.
Madam, you called me. Is there
Marissa,
Yes, Madam Stevenson.
I did call you. Do you not think that I know what you are doing?
Madam, I clean carefully every morning and every evening, just as you requested.
And yet, then you replace the dust. You place it in exactly the same place, knowing I will see it, just to mock me.
Madam, I serve you. I would never mock you.
And yet, you think that I will not find you out. Who is it you really serve? What is it you want? Is it my inheritance? What is it my husband wants? Where will the dust mites lead? For
Madam, I implore you, do not blame me for what you think is dust. I think it is, forgive me, but an unsettled mind.
Yes, for this was part of the plan, to turn my mind upon itself, to spread dust within my thoughts, so that the gritty work would fall upon itself like sandpaper in my thoughts, and it worked. At night in my dreams, my thoughts would grate upon themselves till my brain started to ache, and headache after headache came upon me till I could barely see straight. And yet,
Darling, are you all right? You're having another night terror.
Ah, Gerald, you must fire her. You must get her out of our house. Can't you see? She torments me.
Darling, do calm down. Here, have a sip of your tea by your bedstand here. Darling, fire who?
It is the maid you have hired. She torments me. You've set her at me, haven't you?
Darling, you have been concerned about irrational things of late. I promise you, Marissa has come to us with the highest recommendations from the highest houses in the land.
And yet, I tell you, she has placed the dust there to weave into my brain and set my sandpaper grating in my head. If you loved me and trusted me, you would let her go.
Excuse me, sir and madam. I heard madam screaming and I thought perhaps she would like a tincture so that her sleep would be calm.
Yes, thank you so much, Marissa. Kindly put it on the table there. And if you'd excuse Madam and I.
Yes, sir.
What is in that drink?
My
She
darling.
comes at the least opportune times, and now that the dust is in my brain, she chooses to poison me more.
Enough of this! Listen to me! I dare say, my darling, I have put up with this for far too long. You have seen dust where there is no dust. I checked that banister myself. It was as clean as God's breath.
And it was with this statement, dear reader, that I saw where I had been blind before. So fixated on the dust on the banister had I been that I had not seen what had really been contaminated. For it was my husband who had hired Marissa, and it was my husband, of course, who had masterminded it all. With his denial here, and the anger and the rage which showed in his voice, I saw that it was him who had poisoned it all. I took my drink and made him drink, for this I knew would show him to be the liar that he was. Oh, I make it up, is it? You drink.
Darling, it is simply a beverage intended to soothe nerves. Now listen to me, and listen to me good, Annabelle. I've put up with this for quite enough, and I'm afraid I shan't put up with it any longer.
How could it be? Again, he was one step ahead of me. He had contaminated his body so that he had an antidote to the poison.
Annabelle, are you listening
inside of him?
I don't want to be...
Mr. McAllister, came as quickly as I got your memo.
Yes.
This
Annabelle, you must listen to me. This here is Dr. Johansson.
Yes. Annabelle, a pleasure to meet you.
Dr. Johansson owns a resting place where you can go to rest your nerves, my dear, until you're feeling better. And in the meantime, Marissa and I shall dust the entire house.
Annabelle, would you please look at the tip of my wand here? Follow with your eyes. Very good. And I'm going to say one word, and I want you to immediately tell me the word that comes to your mind. Dust.
Poison.
Mr. McAllister, if I may tell you in private, your wife needs to come with me immediately.
Yes. Doctor, I seem to have no more sway over her heart or her mind. Perhaps I shall leave the two of you to talk in private.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. McAllister.
Doctor, you must believe me. My husband and my maid have conspired. They want my fortune. You must save me.
Why do you have such doubts upon your marriage? Mrs. McAllister, you are quite ill. You must come with me immediately.
No, please, you must believe me. Every night and every morning, the dust, it is there. Can't you see? I will show you. I will show you.
There is? Where? I see nothing here.
And so, it was so important. I dragged him down to the stairs. I showed him down the stairs, but
Mrs. McAllister!
It was only that I wanted to show him, and with such effort that I dragged him down the stairs.
Mrs. McAllister!
I wanted to show him when
I'm falling, Mrs. McAllister!
It was just that I needed him to see. That was all. And there, upon the floor, as his cracked and the blood fell upon the stain, you could see the blood. There it illuminated all the dust. It glowed and illuminated the pattern which spelled out death there upon the banister. There, do you see? Can you see it? Scared, flashing there, the dirt and dust, death spelled out. Do you see, husband? Can you see it now?
What have you done?
Do you believe me now?
You killed him.
That was an accident. He wouldn't believe me. I needed to make him see. But can't you see? Can't you see now? It was necessary, for all the dust is illuminated.
I see nothing but his blood.
Can you still deny it?
You have gone mad. Please, for the love of God. Marissa, she's dangerous.
I was right. You are together. And with that, I took from the doctor's bag his syringe to sedate me and plunged it into Marissa. I could not let her hurt me. I thought perhaps my husband would be at my side. But no, he cowered from me. Please, come back. And yet, he tumbled away from me, down the stairs next to the doctor, until all that was left was the glowing dust. Proving my point. And so, dear reader, all that is left is for me to finally clean the mess, till it is shiny. And thus, I tell you this tale, so that you may also clean your house and have a happy ending.
For the purposes of this tale, you can think of me as Lieutenant Schiff. That is not my name, and I tell you that plainly at the outset, so that you understand that while true, these events are intended to incriminate no one. And yet, the facts of this case have rattled in my brain, in my mind, for the past 25 years, like an inmate in an insane asylum, knocking its bloody knuckles and gaunt pate against the rusted iron bars, screaming for freedom, or at least understanding. And yet, I could give those poor thoughts none. For this case, in all my long career of cases, has befuddled me. I have kept the specifics, I have kept the details to myself until now that I sit here, warmly ensconced in the parlor of my comfortable home, on this padded chair, thick with the perfume of the incense that the dear servants in my home spread throughout the air in order to calm my nerves. Warm by the fire as it crackles in the fireplace, reflecting gaily upon the marble mantelpiece and the various knickknacks that are upon it stored. I stare out the window at the dark, foreboding night, the moon heavy and pale in the sky, like a wanton child in search of its mother, only to find that it has been abandoned. And so it shines on, regardless of its own inner sadness. And upon such a night like tonight, I feel it is time to recount here, in writing upon this paper, the story that has so much like a worm inside a rotten apple sought to dig its way out. These events then took place 20 years ago, when I was a younger man than I am now, and when the spirit of law and order and justice beat in my heart like the drums of a drummer boy in a parade, and marshaled all of my thoughts towards one end, protecting the community that I had pledged to protect. It is with such irony and a tear in my eye when I think how far from that pledge I had fallen. And yet, I precipitate my tale. Allow me to return to the events of that day. It was a neighbor of Mrs. Logan who first alerted me to some of the rather strange noises and smells that were emanating from her house on Cadith Street. And so, as a community service, I went to her door and knocked sharply upon it with my knuckles. Mrs. Cadith herself answered the door.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. I was just on my way out, but this stench is so rotten. I'll stay if you'll help me get rid of it.
Well, I'm afraid that is exactly why I was called here. May I come in?
Oh, do come in, of course. Come right in. Another chilly day, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I wouldn't mind a step closer to your fire if it's no intrusion.
Oh, please. I would be most honored if you would come in and please take some time to be a comfort and visit.
I stepped deep into her parlor, and I surveyed the area with my trained eyes. It was a warm and close and comfortable home, not richly attired to be sure, but clean and tidy, and clearly cared for by one who had a meticulous eye for detail. Your home is beautiful, Mrs. Logan.
Oh, so kind of you to say. Oh, I do notice how much attention you pay to your uniform and keeping it quite spiffy. It's really delightful to see someone who cares so much about order and...
It was at that point that I received what should have been my first clue, what should have been the first dawning of light in the darkness of my comprehension, when I inadvertently moved by only the merest fraction of an inch, I tell you, but inadvertently moved a cup that had been placed upon her table. The way she reacted sent shivers down my spine.
Why don't you do that? What's the matter with you? Didn't you see that was carefully placed?
I apologize.
Thank you. Please don't do it again.
You see, Mrs. Logan, the reason I was summoned to your house tonight was because of the smell that you mentioned, and not only that, but some sounds that your neighbors have been complaining of as of late.
Yes. I'm so happy to have you here. It seems to be coming from the closet behind the fireplace. I don't know if the rats have gotten in there or something.
And it was then that I opened the closet. And it was then that I saw it. Can you, dear listener, can you imagine what it was? Can you imagine what the horrifying thing I saw in her closet was? Go on. I know that you are insightful enough to think into the heart and mind of a woman such as she, and say what it was that was found there. Yes, indeed, that is correct. It was a skeleton's hand. My dear Mrs. Logan, the stench was overpowering. My dear Mrs. Logan, that hand, that skeleton's hand. How do you account for that?
Don't touch it, my dear Rupert. He lost it, and now you found it.
Rupert.
Mother, darling, I have finished cleaning Father's chamber.
Lucinda, darling.
Her daughter, Lucinda, entered the room, and it was then at that point, right there, that I committed the indiscretion of which I spoke earlier. The indiscretion which has been the shame and downfall of my life e'er since. I was fool enough to fall immediately in love.
Stop looking at her like that. You can't touch her.
Mother, is there anything else? Or may I be excused?
Darling, you're holding that feather duster too high. Lower it.
Yes, Mother. I'm sorry.
Now go get me a butcher
Punish
knife.
me, Mother.
Now go get me a butcher knife, I said.
A butcher knife? Not again. All right.
I'm sure you might need a butcher knife to scrape up some debris or something in the bottom of the closet. Won't you crawl in there?
And fool enough I was, so befuddled by Cupid's arrow, so blindfolded by love's glaze that I foolishly complied. Yes, yes, of course. Of course I'll go into the closet. It
Here.
was as if I had no longer control of my own actions, for so enwrapped was I with the fair face of Lucinda as reflected in the gleaming steel of the sharpened blade that I, lamb-like, walked backwards into the closet where the overpowering stench of decay was around me.
All right. He's inside now.
Ah!
Take the knife under the door and stab it.
Oh, Mother, must I again?
Yes, darling. Follow what Mother says, remember? Children are to be seen and not heard.
Yes, Mother.
The blade of the knife came perilously close to me as she blindly stabbed through the door of the closet, to my left, to my right, whizzing past my ear, whizzing beneath my nether lip. It was all I could do to maintain my life, squiggling this way and that. Ah! Suddenly,
All right. I want you to know there's a soft pillow in there for you to sit upon and a dead cat for you to eat. Lucinda will make sure that your door stays dusted every day, and we will continue to feed you.
Mrs. Logan exited the room. I could hear through her door the footsteps as she left. I knew that it was Lucinda who was remained outside my prison, my cell, my hideous house of horrors! Lucinda!
Officer, I tried not to stab you. I hope that you are not too wounded.
Lucinda, pray open this door.
I'm sorry. I cannot. It locks automatically. I'm sorry, but you're doomed to die there like my dear papa.
But Lucinda, I love you.
And I love you from the moment we locked eyes. And yet, I cannot save you. My mother is mad, and she will kill every man that she sees, including you.
Lucinda, when I was in the room earlier, I noticed when I inadvertently moved that cup, a little secret compartment in the table. It is exactly the type of compartment that is used to secret a key. Please, Lucinda, see if that is in fact a key. Free me and let us love.
This is the key to our freedom.
She opened the door. I sprung out. Poor dear girl. Her eyes were actually filled with love. Little did she have time to realize I had held a gun at her face and pierced her skull with a bullet.
What have you done? Lucinda! You have let him out.
She raised her knife heavenward. She bared her teeth. She screamed like a fiend from hell.
Ah!
But I shot and I killed her as she fell to the ground. And I left. I left that house of horrors. To this day, it is the only house in which I ever killed, and the only house in which I ever loved. I walked back to headquarters, and I created some fiction to account for what my colleagues would find when they arrived at the house. I tied up all the ends as neatly as any master writer of fiction should, so that no one, not police officer, not neighbor, no one, would ever know how foolishly I had failed. How could it have been? How could I have been lulled so deeply into such foolishness? I sit here now, all of these years later, thinking back on my youthful folly, thinking back on my grave mistake, with nothing to keep me company except the fire in the hearth, this warm brandy in my cup. Oh, and this, the left hand of Lucinda. I cut it off before I left, and I keep it with me now. For as I shall never love anyone else again, I know that I must keep her close at hand. And thus ends my tale. My final tale tonight takes place, or shall I say, starts off in a location which many people are deeply gratified to have never had to have visited in their real life. Can you imagine? Can you guess what place, what strange location my final tale for you begins in? Think, reader, think of all the places you would least like to be, and then imagine yourself there. Yes, that's true. It takes place in a morgue. A morgue that was unfortunately located next to a graveyard, and one that was only one property away from an asylum. What are the odds that so many stereotypical tokens of horror and fright should be so assembled in such close proximity? It is almost as if the sick architects who designed this city were conspiring, I tell you, to create a location that could only spell doom. Of course, at that time, I was very low on the hierarchy at the morgue. I was merely the coroner's assistant. And upon the day that the narrative of my tale begins its journey, I was listening to the coroner as the coroner detailed the gruesome murder that lie on the slab before us.
The skull has been crushed severely, brain matter and eyeballs strewn about. It appears that the larynx has also been torn loose as the victim suffocated upon his own blood and nightmares. You see the heart here, bruised indefinitely as the toe was shoved in at the bottom of the aorta. And the spinal column has been wrapped in a neatly bound bow, as though a gift were placed upon a child's Christmas treasure. And lastly, the skin has been pulled over the face in a gruesome attempt to be some sort of veil as a new bride walks down an aisle at her wedding day.
Dr. Connors, this is the third such murder this week.
Yes, it is quite troublesome.
Do you believe that they're all connected?
I believe that is the case. For the one similarity that they all have is this carving at the bottom of the left foot. Take a close look at it. It is that of a rose.
Odd, wouldn't you say?
Quite odd.
But we had no longer time to discuss about it, because at that moment the door opened and in walked Dr. Connor's wife. She was often in the habit of visiting the doctor at work. The doctor greeted her and welcomed her into the examination room.
Margaret, you are a sight for sorest of eyes.
My love.
I discreetly retired to the corner to allow them their privacy. Oh, but mind you, I listened.
My love, you work so hard. Don't you think it's time to come home and enjoy the comforts of our cozy little home?
Yes, but it appears that someone, Margaret, has left the same mark on all the bodies, which I had thought that someone would be quite keen as to not leave that same mark on all the bodies, Margaret.
Alexander, you know how hearing about the horrors of your work disturbs me. Why can't we go home and have a nice cup of tea as we look at the fire and speak of when we met?
You speak a beautiful scene, my love, but it appears that I must stay back and try to figure out who it was that made this mistake, not once, not twice, but thrice.
Oh, my
Margaret,
love, I will leave you, but please come home. You have been working so long and I worry about you. Farewell.
we shall discuss this later.
Oh, and he left, leaving me alone in the morgue. I must confess that I cherished my time alone in the morgue. I wanted one day to be a great doctor, a great coroner like Dr. Connor, and he was my role model. I looked up to him like a young child looks up to his own father, for I, having lost my father, when in fact I was a young child, lost him to a gruesome death that to this day has been listed as an unsolved murder in the records of the police department. After I took my time luxuriating in the whiff of formaldehyde that perfumed the air, I left the morgue and discovered standing on the street before it a woman.
Flower, sir?
Yes, my dear girl, I'd enjoy a flower very much.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're only the second person who's ever bought a flower from me.
What is your name?
Liza?
Liza. That is a beautiful name.
Why do you laugh, sir?
You wouldn't understand.
You're the only gentleman who's ever bought a flower, sir. Only one lady ever buys a flower from me, sir. Every day. One flower every day when she comes to visit her husband here.
Well, I'd be happy to buy a flower from you, child. I threw her some coins.
Here you are.
I stared at her beautiful eyes. I stared at her pink, petal-like lips, and I gazed in wonder as the moonlight danced on her cheek like glitter on a young child's craft project. My dear girl, I don't suppose you would care to spend some private time with me?
Con.
Would you?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And there I felt the conquest a man such as me feels when beguiling with love, intrigue, romance, a young and gullible woman such as her. Which is why, I tell you, which is why I was so much the more surprised when she took out a thin syringe from the folds of her dress, and before I knew what she did, inserted the needle in the vein of my left wrist and pushed on the plunger, injecting serum into my body. What have you done?
Oh, sir. You seem so stressed, sir. I thought you might want a nice sleep, sir. You bought a flower and you like flowers. I thought you might rest easy and nurture the flowers where the flowers could grow.
My eyes closed, and when they opened again, I was in a dark room with scarce enough light emanating from a candle that I could make out only dimly the craggy stone walls of what I could only describe as a dungeon. My hands were shackled to the wall with rusted manacles, my feet similarly trapped to the ground, and the door to the dungeon swung open on its rusted, creaky hinges, and I saw there not only the woman who had so beguiled me, but Dr. Connor and his wife as well.
Isn't
My
he
boy.
lovely?
The perfect specimen.
All of your work has been worth it, dear Alexander.
All of our work, my dear.
I struggled against the manacles, but it only evoked laughter from my tormentors. Why? Why?
You wish to learn the ways of medicine, and you view me, I know, as a father figure yourself. And what better way to incorporate your knowledge as to become the specimen yourself?
But, no, I am your friend. I am your faithful friend.
Yes, you are.
How could you do this? You're the ones who killed all of those others.
Well,
Are you sure we can't put a flower on his foot?
Roses are so beautiful, so delicate, so perfect.
So perfect, for a flower shall be adorned upon his foot.
I knew that I had precious little time left to concoct a device by which I could escape, and yet, delving deep into my inner resources, I recalled something that Dr. Connors had told me time and time again when describing the mental capacities and thought processes of the criminally insane. He told me that they fear more than anything else in the world betrayal from a close source. And making one last gambit to save my life, I said with a desperate prayer to God that my missive find its home, "Doctor, look out! They are out for you!"
No, we are not out for him.
The doctor snapped,
You are all against me.
and before I knew what was what, the two women lie dead on the floor. Doctor, doctor, pressing my advantage home. Doctor, please unshackle me, unmanacle me, and I shall help you destroy them.
Very well. You are freed.
And so he took me out from my shackles. Not giving him time to think, I grabbed the shears from his hand and plunged them into his heart. He died. Unable to control my repulsion, I vomited right there in the dungeon. And after wiping the vomit off of my nether lip, I stumbled out of that dark pit from hell, taking one last long look at the dead corpse until I walked so far away that I could see nothing except the darkness that surrounded me. I knew that I should go to the police, but my own wits were not cooperating, and instead I went into the forest that led to a cliff that fell 40 yards into a raging river. And there I stood on the precipice of that cliff, half of me pushing my sorry life over, and half of me clinging tenaciously to my own survival. And there I stand to this day. For isn't that where we all stand at every moment of each day, on the very precipice between death and life, between love and fear, between insanity and a thin gossamer strand of being sane? And thus, my dear friend, so ends my tale. And that is our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Let's bring the cast back onto the screen. And on the count of 3, let's all please take a bow. 1, 2, 3. Ladies and gentlemen, I was just joking before. I am Ken Adams, and this is Synergy Theater. And the amazing people that you see on screen with me, go ahead and wave when I say your name. That is Arastu Durakshin, Louise Ritchie, Kat Coppett, Griffin Beer, Robin. Oh my God, Robin, your last name just flew out of my mind.
Fisher, Robin Fisher.
Robin Fisher, I know and love Robin Fisher and Lynn Shields. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Synergy Theater performs full-length improvised plays. We are here every Friday at 7:00 p.m., every Thursday at 6:00 p.m., always with a brand new improvised show, and all based on your suggestions, at least when I remember to ask for them when I'm supposed to. All based on your suggestions. Thank you so much for being here, folks. If you want to check out our website, synergytheater.com, you can learn about all the improv classes we teach. We're starting a whole new group of classes next week, so come on and take a class. And if you're in the mood, you can donate some money to our cause. We are a nonprofit charitable organization, and we are very much grateful for any tax-deductible donation you would like to offer us in order to allow us to keep bringing you free online improvised theater for as long as we are all here inside. Ladies and gentlemen, happy Halloween. Please stay safe. Please stay healthy. And always remember that Synergy Theater loves you. Good night, everyone.